Meine Damen und Herren, ich begrüße Sie zur Tagesschau. Die EU hat sich bis zu 300 Millionen Dosen des Corona-Impfstoffes der Pharmafirmen BioNTech und Pfizer gesichert.
So the European Union so far secured the 300 million doses of the coronavirus vaccine from the Pfizer and BioNTech. It has secured so far the amount of vaccine that could be given to 300 million people, because not really 300 million people technically, because each person would be given 2 shots, right? But the actual doses, as I've already actually mentioned earlier, 300 million doses, so it would be given approximately the half amount of people, 150 million, right? I have to actually say it this way. But the actual word is the European Union so far secured approximately 300 million doses from the Pfizer and BioNTech, so that each person would take 2 shots, right? So I should have never said it's a people, but I heard it at the very beginning. I heard that, but I wanted to paraphrase it. But you should never say that. I'll do my very best not to add something that's not there. It's a very important. Please do not add anything. It's your fault.
Der Liefervertrag sei unterschriftsreif, teilte die EU-Kommission mit. Die beiden Unternehmen hatten gestern vielversprechende Forschungsergebnisse vermeldet.
The EU Commission, as a part of the contract, by putting down its signature for the actual delivery undertaken, because this contract has been conducted under the overview of the European Commission, and the companies reported more of a positive research results by releasing more of a data.
Die Zahl der Neuinfektionen in Deutschland bleibt unterdessen auf hohem Niveau.
Meanwhile, the number of the Germans' infection still remains at a high level. It would never go down because the number of people in Germany affected by the coronavirus still remains high. That's what she said.
Im 7-Tage-Durchschnitt hat sich der Anstieg allerdings abgeflacht.
But the 7-day average number, however, that somehow gets a little bit curbed. The actual 7-day average somehow gets disproportionately measured, because so far there has been a certain type of average throughout the 7-day, but that eventually got changed. There was a deviation from the 7-day average number. That's what she said. Abgeflacht. No, I heard that.
Eine Gesprächsrunde zu Corona hat der Bundespräsident in Schloss Bellevue versammelt. 5 Menschen berichten von ihrem Leiden durch das Virus. Alle sind, obwohl längst genesen, bis heute gezeichnet.
So 5 people were convened at the Bellevue, the president's residence, because the German federal president wants to hear from these 5 different people concerning how they cope with the virus. They actually share their stories and talked about their issue, how they actually, navigate through this coronavirus.
In Huber lag Wochen im Koma, Folge körperlicher Verfall, Erschöpfung, Konzentrationsprobleme.
Für mich war das größte Erschrecken, Herr Bundes.
So this person who actually, had experienced the coronavirus, the crisis, heavily by going through serious complications coming from that. So even experienced a coma and a similar reaction to stroke, and is still reeling from the side effects of coronavirus, having a respiratory disorder, and it was a very tough time.
Präsident, als ich aufgewacht bin nach 5 Wochen, ich konnte mich überhaupt nicht bewegen.
For 5 weeks, approximately for 5 weeks, he couldn't barely move. He couldn't actually sustain his life because the corona complication was very tough. So he shared, how he survived it. So he had a serious respiratory breakdown. The whole situation evolved into a stroke-like difficulty. He could barely move. He had a complete termination of the entire system. So he couldn't move. He could hardly move throughout the 5 weeks. I can hear that, I'm not lying.
Und zwar deswegen, weil ich keinen Muskel mehr hatte.
Mm-hmm. And I had actually felt that my muscles stiffened, and just actually, because he couldn't actually be involved with a kinetic move. So it's really like, entire body would be hardened. So he would be in paralysis. He couldn't actually muster himself any power to walk or even make tiny move.
Ich habe es total unterschätzt.
I had it completely underestimated, tell the truth.
Ich nicht geschützt. Ich sah keine Ansteckungsgefahr. Ich sah eigentlich gar nichts.
He had no preparation, or he never even thought that he would even be infected with it. He was defenseless because he thought that it would be nothing. He would never be affected by it, but turned out to be that was not really the case. Because of this, a little bit of inattention. Tell the truth, not a little bit. I have to be very cautious. I have to deliver his own words. He had this completely underestimated. Because of that, he had no estimation for his possible infection. So he never actually cared about the proper measures. He took it too lightly. Yeah, that's really the one.
Ich habe das bitter bereut.
And I have a very regret for that. Because, that's eventually, after all, he paid a lot because of that. So he had a very, very bitter feeling about this type of inattention or negligence or underestimation he had.
진짜 처음 들어요. 일부러 며칠 지난 본 적이 없는 뉴스를 하는 거야. 내가 너무 많이 들었기 때문에.
Der Bundespräsident will auf die Schwere der Erkrankung hinweisen, auch mit Blick auf die Gegner der Corona-Maßnahmen.
Bekämpfen können wir die Pandemie eben nur mit Vernunft, mit großer Geduld, mit Solidarität und nicht zuletzt mit der Hilfe von Wissenschaft und immer auf der Grundlage von Fakten.
So, the federal president definitely indicates all the difficulties coming from the coronavirus pandemic crisis, and he really wanted to give a pep talk to those people struggling, either physically or mentally. He literally hinted at the difficulty of surviving this crisis, but he asks for cooperation, because the only way to win over this crisis is relying on reason. And it definitely requires more patience from citizens. Then in that way we can actually demonstrate solidarity. So we must actually hang in there together. And we need to have enough tolerance and patience. I mean, he literally appeals to common sense and reason to lead people to act reasonably with the tolerance and solidarity. Solidarity here means you would not act alone out of your selfish reason. You actually have a sense of belonging to this community, so you stand by the same common cause to survive this difficulty. That's really the sense. And he also emphasized the very decision, and we need to actually respect the very decision coming from or affected by the scientific research data. We need to give more trust to science-oriented data, and this type of understanding should be the guiding light, leading us to make right decision. Nothing else. We don't need to be driven by politics, but we need to actually rely on a reason, and that way we can actually accept difficult choices. But we must prioritize what matters most. In this time of difficulty, there should be no politics or regional favoritism or whatever other feelings. Because it's science. Medical sciences should be the be-all and end-all. Because in that way we can secure, not really, he didn't really say in that way, but medical sciences should be, and the data from the medical sciences should have a greater influence to dictate our next step in policy making. So we all need to bear difficulties coming from this type of suppression and lockdowns based upon reason and solidarity. You really care about this country, you think about your neighbors, so you put down a token of patience and forbearance and tolerance. In that way we can actually stand by the common cause all together. We can rally behind the common cause. That's a solidarity. I mean, I think I can understand it.
Wissenschaft und Forschung liefern Hoffnung. Das Mainzer Unternehmen BioNTech hat gemeinsam mit dem US-Konzern Pfizer einen produktionsreifen Impfstoff zu 90% wirksam.
So, at this moment, medical researchers really wish Mainz-based scientific research center called a company called BioNTech, in collaboration with the United States pharmaceutical company Pfizer, would be able to deliver the fully ripened materials ready to be injected into the veins of people with the reported accuracy up to 90 percentile. So right now, medical researchers look to this Mainz-based company named BioNTech in collaboration with the United States pharmaceutical company Pfizer to deliver its full product within the vicinity. Since whose accuracy is reported to be 90 percentile, so hopefully this would prove itself to be that way, so more people would be benefiting from it. That's really the hope. Scientists really, really wish the delivery of a vaccine with this much accuracy would turn the tide. That's really the thingy, right? And by the way, this BioNTech is based in a German location called Mainz. M-A-I-N-Z, right? Because you probably remember that there was a Mainz Boulangerie, a bakery in Seoul, and I really used to drop by that whenever I was waiting for my French test. And by the way, there is a soccer club called, from that reason, Mainz, right?
Obwohl klinische Tests noch laufen, spricht der Gesundheitsminister von Licht am Ende des Tunnels. Europäische Lieferverträge, die heute fertig wurden, sichern der EU 200 Millionen Impfdosen zu. Auf weitere 100 Millionen gibt es eine Option.
So, this delivery would actually be, the light at the end of the tunnel. How quickly would it actually come, whether this delivery would be fully made? This is really like, the ray of light at the end of the tunnel, as expressed by German's health minister. But so far, the German government is looking into the case for the full recognition of it. At that time, this is old news, don't worry. It's a November 10th. That's a very old news, because I really wanted to be exposed to something that I don't know. In that way, you can be tested accurately. I don't really know. I've never watched it, and it's very difficult. If you don't understand the right answer, you probably rely on your previous knowledge, and this could make things really wrong. And right now, the German government is looking into its own approval case, but the European Union reached an agreement to give an emergency approval, but this is not fully done. It already actually put down initial signature for the estimation, but this is a very early preliminary session. But this at least has been told to secure 200 mandatory vaccine doses, 200 million by the way. 200 million doses would it be secured compulsorily, and further 100 million would it be optional elective vaccines. So right now the European Union is really close to sealing the deal as it puts down the preliminary approval to secure the proper portion of vaccines available in the European Union after the clinical test. Once the clinical test would be fully completed, with that result indicating no security breaches or harmful effects, then European Union already put down its initial approval to secure 200 million doses as a primary vaccine conveyance. And after that, there would be additional 100 million as an optional choice. This will be optional delivery. So first, mandatory primary doses would be 200 million. If the clinical test and the emergency authority would be done properly, the European Union puts down the signature on the condition that the still ongoing clinical and health-related concerns would be clearly explained, and there will be no further indication about whatsoever clinical challenges or safety difficulties. Under that condition, it puts down its own signature saying that we would like to secure 200 million vaccines if approved by the health organization or Food and Drug Administration, right? But definitely not the United States Food and Drug Administration. But the Commission already laid down a signature to secure this much. If and only if this would survive the security test, it would actually be cleared from any health-wise concerns, or it would actually indicate no harmful effects on patients. If that would be licensed to be circulated, the European Union wants to have 200 million doses and 100 million additionally.
Wir könnten es doch den Europäern und ich insbesondere nicht den Deutschen nicht erklären, wenn ein Impfstoff in den USA oder in anderen Regionen der Welt verfügbar wäre und verimpft würde, aber in Deutschland und Europa nicht.
It's not really something that I can actually say that this would be the Euro and the German alone, because this should be the altogether issue. It's not really something that the regionally acting alone to have this type of vaccine. It's not like what should be avoided, and it's not likely to be the case that because the early action is really necessary, so the European Union should act together. So there should be no dire scenario like the United States would gain access to vaccines and the rest of the world would actually get a vaccine, but Europe or Germany would have no access to it, or the people living in Europe or Germany would not get it. This is not the case, because there should be work on it, and that way it's not likely.
Insgesamt strebt die Bundesregierung an, bis zu 100 Millionen Impfdosen von BioNTech zu beziehen, dank einer Forschungskooperation.
So the rest of 100 million would be secured, or at least it would be put aside from the BioNTech, because there is a research cooperation demonstrated by the German administration. So in that way, it would actually secure it, and not really secure. It would at least have a chance to have additional 100 million because of its contribution made throughout the research and development from the administration, because the German government was very supportive of this process.
Deutschland unterstützt das Unternehmen finanziell mit 375 Millionen Euro. Zügig, aber dennoch sorgfältig solle nun die europäische Zulassung des Impfstoffs erreicht werden.
So because, so far, the German government and the German affiliations already support the 350 million euro throughout the development. And the only thing that we are actually looking into right now with very concern is that the actual approval coming from the European Food and Drug Administration. The actual health authority should give okay. In that way, the European Union can deliver this, because the European Union's Commission made a contract, but that's really predicated upon one serious condition. As long as it would actually pass the health-wise screening, if we somehow manage to obtain approval from the health authority and a public health and medicine authority, then this would be okay. But right now, all eyes are definitely on this institution, which would actually have a final say in this area, as a medicinal and pharmaceutical experts who can truly review the clinical tests conducted by the company and overview all different security issues, whether this would have a side effect, whether this could actually have a long-term consequences. Like this type of a rigorous vetting would be necessary by the health organization, right? 이렇게 됐어요.